We should think for ourselves, and we should do what's in the best interest of our people. And having a healthy, peaceful relationship with China makes sense for the people of Europe. It hasn't. While America had an amazing potential to be a great country, and was a great country in some ways, and probably still is in some ways, but the impact that it has had outside its borders has not been a positive one in many ways. They have used their military to safeguard their financial investments and interests around the world at the great expense of the ordinary people in every country. Sadly, that's what Europe is doing. We're escalating the war by giving guns to Ukraine, and we haven't tried to establish peace. We haven't made any effort to establish dialogue and diplomacy, which is shocking for us. Instead, we have supported a US-NATO proxy war that is a disaster for everybody, particularly the Ukrainians, also for the Russians, also all the people of Europe, and beyond that as well. We also condemn the failure of the EU to make any effort to bring about dialogue and diplomacy. And the effort by China to introduce an idea for peace, a form of a peace deal, was welcomed by us, right? But sadly, the Americans and the Europeans don't seem to be interested. The sabotage of Nord Stream 2 was an act of terrorism. It was an incredible environmental crime. It was the largest release of methane emissions in the history of mankind. It's obvious the Russians didn't blow up their own pipe. If they don't want any gas to go through the pipe, they can just turn off the gas on their end. But why would you destroy it in the first place? They're not that stupid. And until the European Union shows a serious appetite for getting the truth of this, it is very hard for them to have any credibility in giving out about anybody else about anything. If the European Union, have they asked the Americans, did you do it? Well, if they did, why don't they come back and tell us, oh, we asked the Americans, did they do it? And they said no. Why haven't we heard that? Huh? Come on, it's common sense. We have felt since 2019 that the US has been trying to drive a wedge between Europe and China. And we believe that this is not in the interest of Europe. Anyone that thinks that China is going to invade Europe with military is mad. It's not going to happen, and it doesn't make any sense. So we don't think that China is a threat to our security. Now, obviously, we also don't think that China is a threat to the security of the people of America, but as we've said many times, we do believe that America feels the threat of China to its financial supremacy and the power of the dollar. And that's a big problem for the Americans, and as far as we can see, America is prepared to behave aggressively towards China in order to undermine it in some form. And sadly for us, they're using Europe as a tool against China. When I said that Europe should have an independent policy towards China, I believe Europe should have an independent policy towards every country, and we shouldn't be dictated to by the Americans. We should think for ourselves, and we should do what's in the best interest of our people. And having a healthy, peaceful relationship with China makes sense for the people of Europe. And fighting with China, behaving aggressively, sending warships to the South China Sea, as far as we're concerned, is not positive. And China is a world player now. China is going to be probably the strongest country in the world in my lifetime. So we want China to work with countries in a peaceful way, and work with them. If you're going to trade with them in a way that benefits the citizens of the country. But we feel that China has the potential to be a positive player on the world stage, to be a positive player in how it does its trade and how it does its business with others. And listen, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm optimistic that China can play a positive role. But I also want the European Union to work with China